Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing a Murder. And today, we're moving pretty quickly here now on Life Beyond the Grave. We're on part 86. We're not going to waste any time, so we're going to jump right to it. So we learned that Charles, while he had stolen Lori's purse from JJ's school, and Lori had gone to the officers thinking that she could build a report, so some things against Charles. The police mediate this situation. They're able to get Charles to bring her purse, and she actually volunteers to go have a psych eval. Very strange. She brings her friend Melanie Gibb along. Less than a few hours, Lori returns from her evaluation, and she's deemed to be normal. So she's free. She's given the okay, and she goes on living her life, a life of threats, disaster, and spending days at the temple. Charles is dumbfounded. He doesn't understand how this could happen. But she has her pockets full of Charles' money that she pulled out of his payroll account. She has a few plans in mind. One of those plans is going to be to move in with her brother, Alex Cox. She disappears, leaving Charles and JJ alone. This is happening at the beginning of February. For a period of time, she takes Tylee with her, but will ultimately leave Tylee to stay with her uncle, Alex. And this is while Lori is traveling all over the place, including Hawaii, Idaho, and other places. At some point at the beginning of February, Daily Mail actually reports that there are a few neighbors that actually spot Lori at Alex's home and that they're arguing in the middle of the street. A lot of people who have supervised the relationship between Alex and Lori, we've gotten several opinions of how they thought about this relationship. One of them being Alex's ex-wife. She claims that there was a lot of inappropriate touching between the two. Now they're in the middle of the street arguing like an old married couple. In the articles, they report this fight as an explosive fight. One of the neighbors, his name is Donnie Self, said, "People were coming out into the street to watch. She was screaming at him, accusing him of bringing disgrace to their family." So obviously, she's using these manipulation tactics to con her brother into doing whatever she wants. And while she's having constant disputes with everyone that surrounds her, obviously, if they don't do what she wants or cower down to her, you're going to have a problem with Lori. And why is it these people want to continue to be in her life? This is a question a lot of people are asking. We can't answer that. All we can say is good manipulator. She's a master manipulator. I mean, here, this woman has totally just left her kid that she's raised from a baby, JJ, with a severe form of autism. We know that he has a therapy dog, which I might have forgot to mention, so we'll mention it now. Charles has spent a buku loads of money on a nice training therapy dog for his son, JJ. He also has to have an iPad with him at all times. JJ, who is used to having his mother around 24/7 more than his father, and his sister Tylee, has been abandoned. Lori has left them with $7 or less to his name. There seems to be no concern for the well-being of Charles or her son. Way different than what Lori's family will report about her. But there's something I wanted to share before we move forward. What did Melanie Gibb think of the relationship and the personalities of Lori and Charles?
Did you have much interaction with Charles?
A little bit.
And what was that like?
So when I did interact, it was just like the first time I came over, I believe we did a barbecue, and he was cooking barbecue. That seemed that something that he was good at, according to both of them. And there was swimming in the pool with the kids, and he seemed like just kind of a nice guy, just happy to see us, happy to meet us. I don't know. It was an enjoyable conversation. He was talking a little bit about his conversion to the church, and he seemed to be pretty excited about it.
How would you describe his and Lori's marriage?
There seemed to be some arguing often when I would see them together. So he was trying to do things to help her and please her, and she seemed like she was struggling to be happy by that. Like she seemed a little often frustrated with him. They had something going on that I didn't quite understand, but there seemed to be a lot of contention between the two of them.
Did you ever see him lose his temper or become irate or angry with Lori or the kids?
Nope.
Did you ever see her become upset or angry with Charles?
Like vocally, I could see her, being upset, and he was frustrated back, so he might have had a little bit of that stress in his voice when you argue. So I would say just that arguing kind of a upset voice.
So Melanie, she sees that her good friend's cheating. She sees Lori and Charles' relationship falling apart, and she can see that it's not because Charles isn't trying. Lori's being very deceitful and very secretive. And we'll go into that right now as well. Let me play this part of the interview with Nate Eaton at East Idaho News. Make sure you catch this entire interview, guys, at his YouTube channel. See, Lori's in a place where she quits going to church. She believes that she knows more than the church leaders. And she only goes to the temple. But here's the thing. The way that she uses the temple is not okay. And Melanie and Nate Eaton explain why.
They were so secretive.
When you go to church in the temple, there's certain questions they ask you to see if your belief systems are consistent with the doctrine. And they were inconsistent. And so that's the reason you're going to be secret about it, because, you think you know something more than they do. That at least that's, what was introduced, is this idea we know more. So if that got out, people would think you were unusual or weird in the church, right? And then they would say, hey, I don't think that you're allowed to go into the temple because of these teachings. So you're going to keep that secret, right?
Latter-day Saints need, if they want to go and worship at the temple, they need to go see their religious leaders, their clergy, every 2 years and get a recommend that allows you to go into the temple. But you have to be living certain standards. And you're saying Chad and Lori clearly were not living those standards, or at least following the doctrines being taught.
Correct.
But they were still going to the temple.
Oh, yeah. That was her favorite place to go.
What's Lori's favorite place?
She'd go to the temple, but maybe not to church.
She'd go to the temple, but not to church.
Yeah.
So did you know that their teachings weren't in line with the mainstream?
Yeah.
And did you talk with her about it?
Yeah.
And what was the reaction?
Okay, so next, Melanie Gibb will go into a subject where she believes, she's a victim to Lori's teachings. But you got to remember, these guys are all teaching each other, not just Lori teaching them.
Well, when she taught me, she was leading me to believe they were true. So there would be times where I'm like, do you think that's a good idea? Or do you think this is, those kind of thoughts? But I just kind of didn't voice a much opposition to it, but just more listened, just more listened.
Was there ever a time where you thought, whoa, this is too much. This crosses the line?
Well, I always thought this is a little unusual.
Keep in mind that Melanie Gibb is saying a little unusual, and she also represents preparing a people. Again, in my opinion, based off of my research, and I still haven't finished researching, there's so much to learn. Preparing a people have really given and place for all of these strange teachings to reach further than they ever dreamed. An important question is, are the leaders of the LDS supporting this? Because preparing the people, they're still affiliated with the church and they're still making videos. Now, let's think about it. They're not doing what they were doing now, during this time. But still, behind the scenes, they're still teaching stuff. People like Melanie Gibb still believe in some of this stuff that they're teaching, and they're still attached to the church. Insane. Charles is now trying to run a household on zero money. He now has JJ, no one to help him with JJ, and Charles continues to reach out to family members of Lori. At one point, Charles is able to get in contact with Zach Cox, and he tells Zach how he found a lot of his stuff behind Lori Vallow's end-day storage. But isn't it interesting how this entire family is afraid to go against Lori or do something, she asked them not to or tells them not to? Meanwhile, Chad Daybell, he's somehow juggling the lies to his family, trying to maintain that he's an honest, godly man while cheating on his wife and his children. He's spending a lot less time thinking about his company and writing books and more about this woman that come into his life. In fact, Chad Daybell is canceling a lot of the things that he had planned because he has decided that he wants to make a change or go a different direction. He's starting to travel a lot more, leaving Tammy behind. And Tammy has no idea that her husband has been sealing himself to an illegal eternal marriage. Even worse, they're doing it by use of the temple without the church knowing. So for many of you that are not LDS members, remember, being sealed means that you are married for an eternity. This is preparation for eternity. So when all of these people pass away, guess what? They're going to all be connected because they're all sealed. So that's going to be one big happy family in eternity. Lori Vallow, Charles Vallow, Chad Daybell, and Tammy Daybell. That's going to be one confusing eternity. Charles is trying to find his truck, and eventually Lori tells him, "You can find your truck here." And Lori will take off and disappear. No one will know where she is except for a couple of people. And Melanie says she's with her every single day. How are they going to afford to not work and go all over the place? Meanwhile, it seems that the spirit that was in Charles, Ned Snyder, well, he's being hijacked. There's a new spirit coming, and they refer to it as Garrett, and later on, Hiplos. Lori's very disappointed. She had these visions that her husband Charles and her son had died in a car wreck. That didn't happen. And while going through all of these crazy things, Chad and Lori, they're getting super anxious to be together, but I would have to say that Lori is more anxious than Chad. So there are some documents that are released, and it had to do with what was happening during this time. And Justin Lum, like I said, he was the document man. He finds these documents Charles filed against Lori, and they were filed, according to this information, February 4th of 2019. At this time in Charles' life, he is thinking about divorcing Lori. And he begins to process. He knows this is most likely the best thing to do, but he's not really 100% on board with that fact. Charles remembers that when he finally got in contact with Lori, how she said she wanted nothing else to do with him, wanted nothing to do with the kids because she had a more important mission to fulfill. Here we are about 2 weeks later. Charles is having to describe everything that just happened at the end of January through the very beginning of February for his divorce. Now, during the time that this story is breaking, we have no idea where Lori is when she disappears. But we know that Charles, he's spending a lot of time trying to find out where she is so that he can serve these divorce papers. Charles gets an idea where Lori's, that she's hanging out at a few of these events that are going through the Preparing the People. One of those times, Lori is going to Boise with a friend, most likely Melanie Gibb. and he makes a few attempts to serve her at the airport, a hotel, and at that public event. All of those attempts unsuccessful. He eventually learns that Lori's living with her brother in Santan Valley, Arizona, Alex Cox, where they notice, both Lori and Alex Cox vehicles are in the driveway. But again, he's not able to serve these papers. Before I forget, when Lori and Alex Cox get into an argument in the middle of the street, neighbors said that they noticed that she's there, but after this argument, they don't see her anymore. So one of the other top reporters is Adam Herbert, and he wrote a great article January 4th of 2020, and he shared some of the divorce documents that for Charles. Okay, so let's share that. Mother, Lori Vallow, has recently become infatuated at end-time assesses about near-death experiences and spiritual visions. Lori told Charles Vallow that she was sealed, eternally married to an ancient Book of Mormon prophet Moroni, and that she had lived numerous lives on numerous planets prior to the current life. Lori also believes that she is married to James the Just in a past life, and also lived as Mary French in the 1800s, who was Joseph Smith Jr.'s natural grandmother. Lori also informed Charles that she was a translated being who could not taste death, sent by God to lead the 144,000 into the millennium. Lori believes that she is receiving spiritual revelations and visions to help her gather and prepare for those chosen, to live in the New Jerusalem after the Great War as prophesied in the Book of Revelations. So let's pause there. So remember, Charles is doing his own research here. He's trying to put together what's going on, and he's having difficulties. And so this is what he's coming up with. On January 29, 2019, during a phone conversation between both parties, after a physical separation, Lori informed Charles that she was a god assigned to carry out the work of the 144,000 at Christ's second coming in July 2020, and that if Charles got in her way of her mission, she would murder him. The next day, Charles was on a business trip in Houston, and during another phone conversation, she kept referring to Charles as Nick Snyder instead of his name Charles. Charles asked, "Who is Nick Snyder?" And Lori told him that Nick was the father, Charles' real name, because Nick had killed Charles and taken his identity. Lori proceeded to warn Charles that she would kill him upon his return home and had an angel there to help her dispose of the body. She also mentioned that she would not only kill him, but would destroy him financially in what she did. Since that conversation, Lori's communications with Charles have been rare and intermittent. Now you got to remember, Charles is trying his best. He's making phone calls. He's calling his sister, his brother-in-law, his kids, everybody that he can talk to about this situation, trying to find someone to help him. He's really not doing well. He spent many nights crying. He knows he should probably give this up, but he doesn't totally do that. He just can't bring himself to do what he knows he should do. And this divorce proceeding, it won't last much longer. Because Lori is a manipulator. She will manipulate Charles, knowing how he feels about her. She knows that she can get him to do whatever she wants him to do. For Lori, many people are just puppets. And there's a part where I research where Lori reads, and I will find it later in my massive timeline. It's getting difficult to find stuff. But Lori kind of suggests that sometimes you have to take out your entire family to do what you need to do to prepare for the second coming. So keep that in mind. What her family, like her mother and her sister and her brothers, don't realize is Lori's disconnected that bond, that little bit of bond she did have with them. And for her, they will all become a nuisance, just like her children, just like her husband. Lori is obsessed with end days, temples, and visions. And I'm going to go ahead and start kind of giving you guys an idea of what I believe Lori is interested in. I believe that Lori is interested in building a temple for her. And you will hear this as more about this as we get into October, September, in that area. But you got to understand, her ideas, her visions right now, they're based around the temple. The temple is so very important to her. And she's very excited about something to do with a temple in the future. So a lot of people are like, what made her want to sacrifice her entire family, including her own parents? I mean, it was getting to that point. Well, imagine having your own castle. That's speculation, but that's what I believe. Lori is pulling more away from her family the closer she gets to Chad and this group of people like Melanie Gibb. And they're fueling the fire. All right, guys, we're going to stop right here. Please make sure if you like my work, show it. I have noticed that the views are kind of down, so this is a lot of work. Do I need to keep doing it or not? Or should we move on to other stories? And I've mentioned this multiple times, so make sure you guys, you got to let me know you're interested in this stuff. Don't forget, we have those people. Their faces remain missing. People like Jasmine Robinson, Summer Wells. Take one moment out of your busy life to share their story or their face. I love you guys, and I'll see you guys soon.